guess what? I have a message. Give me. Today, you can hear me, I hope. All right, today's message is kind of part 2 of last week's message. We talked about the blood, and there was some mention of a thing or two, and I'm decided I'm going to pick it up today. Abba Yahweh, we thank you so much for the great words that you've given to us in your book. We thank you that Yeshua came and expanded on your word. Please be with us as we listen to your words today and open our eyes and our minds that we might see wonders. In Yeshua's name, amen. Last week, we mentioned about the blood, and we used this verse, Leviticus 17:11, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your lives. For it is the blood that makes atonement for the life." It is the blood that makes the atonement, and the life of the flesh is in the blood. And there were other things we talked about, so you have to go back and watch the rest of it. Disclaimer, the following is my opinion, okay? You do not have to believe a single word I am saying. But it's, when I say I believe that, I'm giving you my opinion. This appears in the New Testament in John chapter 6, verses 51 through 59. So you might want to turn to John chapter 6, verse 51 through 59, because I'm going to read it anyway. Yeshua says, "Eat my flesh and drink my blood." And this is a hard word, so we're going to talk about it. Verse 51 and 52, Yeshua says, "I am the living bread which came down out of the heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. And indeed, the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I shall give for the life of the world." Verse 52. The Yehudim, therefore, were striving with one another, saying, "How is this one able to give his flesh to eat?" They were weirded out. Yeshua therefore said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Adam and drink his blood, you possess no life in yourself. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood possesses everlasting life, and I shall raise him up in the last day." Continuing, "For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood stays in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I because of the Father, and I live because of the Father, so he who feeds on me shall live because of me. This is the bread which came down out of the heaven, not as your fathers ate the manna and died. He who eats this bread shall live forever." And it closes with, "He said this in the congregation, teaching in Kafar Nahum." Where'd this come from? How did he get away with that? He was not talking about cannibalism, okay? It should be understood, and it was probably understood by the people that were with him. Some of them were seriously weirded out. This really divided the group a lot. I believe that, okay? Believe that. Yeshua was referring to the ordination offering. This particular part came to me in about 2004 when I was studying in Exodus, and I came across something that really floored me. The ordination offering is found in Exodus 29, verses 31 through 34. So you may also want to go there. I'm going to read the whole thing. And take the ram of ordination, this is Exodus 29, verse 31, and take the ram of ordination and cook its flesh in a set-apart place. And Aharon and his sons shall eat the flesh of the ram and the bread that is in the basket by the door of the tent of appointment. Verse 33. You want to pay attention to this one now. And they shall eat those offerings with which the atonement was made, to ordain them, to set them apart. But let a stranger not eat them, because they are set apart. And if any of the flesh of the ordination offerings or of the bread be left over until the morning, then you shall burn it up, what is left over. It is not eaten because it is set apart. Now, you all ought to know by now, I really like doing word studies. So I'm going to do a textual analysis, a word study. I want to take the words apart from the Hebrew. In Exodus 31, they speak of a ram of ordination. An El Hamiluim, ram ordination. I'm reading from right to left. Exodus 29:31. The Hebrew word for ordination is melu, or malu, mem, lamed, aleph. That's the root of it. So anytime you see that root word somewhere in other words, this is what it's referring to. It means to ordain, to consecrate, or to confirm. Now understand what those words mean. To consecrate something is to set it apart, but to set it apart for a service. They're not just set apart and standing around with nothing to do. They're set apart specifically to do something. They are confirmed, and it is done in such a manner that it's not private. It's done in front of everybody. Everybody gets to see this whole thing. In verse 32, the Hebrew word for flesh of the ram, basar, that means meat, flesh, what you usually eat. It's also what you're made out of. Ha'ayil, which is flesh of the ram. I believe that our key verse is 29, or verse 33, Exodus 29, verse 33. This is what Yeshua was specifically referring to. So I'm going to do a textual analysis of this. Here's how this works. Eat those offerings with which the atonement was made to ordain them, to set them apart. Now the word offerings does not appear in the Hebrew text. It's understood. And if you read that in Hebrew, it's kind of like, well, they got to be talking about something, and they would have to be talking about what it was in the previous verses. So it's the offerings. The Hebrew word for atonement. Now, when you see the word atonement, it means to you at one meant. You see it? Look at the word, at one meant. It's kupar, and it means to cover or make atonement for, to cover something. That ram was used to make atonement for their sins so that they could be the priests. It was kupar. The Hebrew word used for ordain is maleh. We saw that a little bit before, and we saw that that meant consecrate or to confirm. the Hebrew word for set them apart. Now you should know this. You've heard it enough. Kadesh, you use the word kadosh. You know kadosh? Well, the root is kuf, dalid, shin, to sanctify, to dedicate, or to set apart. And it also means to make holy, but I've already told you how much I don't like the word holy because, holy cow, Batman, we misuse the word. So set apart is pretty serious. It's being specifically set apart. Notice that this stuff is for the Kohanim. The Kohanim, the priests, it's for them to eat and not a stranger, which we're going to get to in a few seconds. Okay, the offering is an ordination offering. Not only was it a sacrifice, but they eat it. They're eating the sacrifice. Last week we talked about the blood covenant and how they walked through the blood, and then they ate those animals. They cooked them, of course, but they ate them. The offerings for the Kohanim to eat, not for the stranger, the non-Israelite. They don't even get, now I don't know why this is actually in the text. I can't see how they got around this place. But they just can't walk up and have a piece. This is strictly for the priesthood. Hang that in your mind a little bit. If Yeshua is referring back to this part of the Torah, then he is saying that his body causes us to be like the Kohanim, the priests. Your mind should have just clicked on a verse that you don't remember where it is, so here it is. Exodus 19, 5 and 6. Now, hear the whole thing. If you diligently obey my voice, it's an if-then, and guard my covenant, then, and I'd like to add, and only then, you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. He can say this. And you shall be to me a reign of priests and a set-apart nation. King James says, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. That Christians love to quote that they are they're a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, which is predicated on if you diligently obey my voice. That's what I think is in that ordination offering. Whoops, wait a minute, let's go back. Oh, come on. Eating the offering. If Yeshua was referring back to that, he was also referring to the kingdom of priests. Do you see it? About the blood, the life of the flesh. Remember Leviticus 17:11. I'm going to do a word analysis of this one too. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your lives. For it is the blood that makes the atonement for the life. All right. I was expecting the word chai, het, yud, to be there for the word life. All right? We're going to talk about chai Sarah, or pastor's going to talk about it shortly, meaning the life of Sarah. That's what the word means, life. Margaret wears a little thing on her neck, or what do you call it? Necklace thing, with it says chai. Pastor's got a tie on. Chai. It says that. You'll find that all over the place. That's not the word used in Leviticus 17:11. Here's exactly what it says. Kai nefesh ha basar Badam, or ki nefesh. Nefesh, the second word on the right, nefesh, is the word used, and we translate it as life. This is an incorrect translation. The Hebrew word life, the Hebrew word nefesh, means being or soul. Life could be, well, my dog's got life, you know? Your dogs have life. It's not the same thing. Nefesh is referring to all of you, all of your you. Do you see that? All of that is, everything that is you is your nefesh. And that's what is in that is the life. The nefesh of the flesh is in the blood. Hang on, I got to look stuff up. I had to make notes on this to make sure I didn't get too far off. Now, I just happen to like this word. Okay, the word for altar or slaughter place is mizbeach. And it is a specific altar. Mizbeach could refer to anything. You could make an altar in your house. No, mizbeach is referring to the altar in the tent of appointed time. You'll see it called tabernacle, or I don't remember what King James calls it off the top of my head. But it is the Ohel Moed. The Ohel means tent. Moed means time, appointed time. The appointed times found in Leviticus 23. It's also the appointed times that Yahweh directed the Kohanim to be in the tent. They didn't just go in there any old time they felt like it. They were in there at a specific time. The Hebrew word used in that verse, Leviticus 17, for atonement is kaper, which is the same word we saw in the other verse. Atonement is kaper, to cover, to make at one meant with. Okay, go to the last word or the last phrase in that sentence. Making atonement for the life. Here's the Hebrew for it. Naf shotai chem. Naf shotai chem. The chem, the last, the two letters on the left of that word means that it is referring to you all. It's not it's not atonement for the life of you, individual. It's for the life of you all as a group. Our language, our English language is limited. The Hebrew language is cooler. The Hebrew language uses these suffixes and these prefixes. Well, this is a suffix. You got the word nefesh. It's those first three letters on the right. Nefesh, we know what that means already, and you can wind the tape back and look at it. Nefesh means being, and the last two letters are referring to being of you all. All right? It's for everybody, but everybody that is a part of Israel. For it is the blood that makes atonement for the life. Ki hadam hu b'nefesh yikaper. Literally, for the blood, he, for the being atonement. In English, it means for the blood makes atonement for the nefesh. Your whole thing. I'm trying to make, you're going to need to review this thing a bit. I'm trying to make a big deal of what life is, what the word life is referring to here. It's not just, well, it's you, the whole of you. Furthermore, did you know that Yeshua is also making reference to Ecclesiastes 2:24? Here's what Ecclesiastes 2:24 says. A man could do no better but to eat and drink, enjoy himself in his labor. That too, I saw, was from the hand of Elohim. Ecclesiastes by Solomon. Colette is his nom de, what do you call that? What's the word for his what? His pen name is Colette. And I always thought this meant, well, eating and drinking, go get a bunch of hamburgers and a beer. I mean, what? That's what I thought. I'm sorry, but that's what it sounded like to me. It's not. Here's the deal. The sages of Yeshua's day understood that all references to eating and drinking in the book of Colette, Ecclesiastes, refer to Torah and good works. Remember, when we recite the Shema, we say that we were to speak of these words in all of our affairs. When we get up, when we lay down, we teach them to our children. We think of them when we walk on the way, whatever we're doing. Our life is supposed to be filled with Torah. Eating and drinking is Torah. Our whole life, everything about us that we should be thinking about is the Torah. And I think Yeshua was also referring to that. Because it was the understanding of the Jewish people of late Second Temple times. That's the people he was talking to. Not to Hellenized Jews. They were sort of whatever. They were just off over in the corner doing whatever they do. But the people that were studying the Torah understood that to eat the flesh of the Son of Man was to absorb his entire way of being and living. That is, to follow the Torah, the law, in the same manner that he did. That's what he was telling us. And he was making it really a big deal to eat it, to consume it, to bring it in and eat the whole thing. Not just, I did Bible study last week, and it was Wednesday night, and then we went out and we went to, where do you go around here? We went home. We went to IHOP and had some pancakes. Yeshua wants us to live, feel, and act just like him. By the power of the Ruach Kodesh, the Holy Spirit, he enables us to do this, just like him. To drink his blood is to absorb his whole life, his self-sacrifice, his very nefesh into our being. Because the life of the nefesh is in the blood. In conclusion, the Hebrew verb for eat is akal. All Hebrew verbs are action words. You are not sitting passively, you are actively sitting in that chair. Second by second, you are moving, although you're not, but you're sitting. To eat his body was to perform an action. It's not passive, like sitting there and just listening to the pastor or the rabbi talk. Oh, hey, that was a really good message, man. Yeah, I like that. Well, what was it about? Well, let me see your notes. You do something, and you eat, you do, which is another reason why he did use the word eat instead of sitting there listening. The Hebrew word to drink is shatah, which means drink, and it's another action word. So to drink his blood, we perform an action of consuming this thing. As you eat his flesh, you become consecrated or confirmed to him. You are set apart to him. His Torah, his word, his law, The whole of Scriptures is Yeshua. He is all of that stuff. As you drink his blood, you become filled with his life, his nephesh. We are expected to live like him and do the things that he did. And what did he do? Where was he on the Sabbath? Shalom, y'all.